Jai Gurudev Sham.
Jai Gurudev Swami Revati.
Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about two topics. We're going to talk about the institutionalization of religious movements, spiritual movements in general, and the notion that Bhakti Marga is considered by some as a cult or a sect. And we need to unpack all of that, see the merits of that argument or not. But before we do that, what I wanted to ask you is if you could please introduce yourself a little bit. So it's your first time on the podcast, so people can get to know you, and then you won't have to ever do that again in the future.
Okay, so I'm Sham. I have been involved with Bhakti Marga for about 13 years now. And as my life with Bhakti Marga has evolved, I've had different hats on. And one of them obviously being involved with teaching and the knowledge aspect of the mission. And so I've given lectures and satsangs and talks. And I've also been involved in the general running of the mission. So I held a directorship for some time. And also I have some other roles still. And currently I live in Germany, very near to the ashram, and with my family. And I grew up in England. Yeah, I guess you've asked me to come along because my background's a bit off the wall.
First of all, because you're an intelligent person, we've Sham and I.
So says you.
I do. No, we've as he was just saying, one of his roles he's had is teaching. We've obviously worked together for many of those years as well, and so I know your thoughts on a lot of subjects, and I appreciate them very much, and I think it's fitting. But also, as you were about to say, I think your religious background is also interesting, and I think it makes sense to sort of touch upon that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I had a mixed parentage, like quite a strange, sometimes volatile and very changeable upbringing. But you know, the part that's most relevant to the discussion today is that I had an Irish Catholic father who wasn't particularly religious, but you know, as a kind of residue, it's there.
Right.
But he always deferred to my mum to, well, that's your business, what the children are taught. And she was obviously, as a Muslim, not a classically strict, staunch Muslim because she was with an Irish Catholic man, right? So, and also, although of Pakistani origin, she herself was born and raised in Uganda in East Africa. And, you know, so the kind of cultural lens through which she experienced that Islam and then herself took to it and practiced it and then imparted it to us was not particularly orthodox, I would say. But having said that, I still had to learn to read the Quran in Arabic, like all nominal Muslims do, right? Sure. And then in the school holidays, she'd say, you've got to go to Friday prayers, you know, which obviously I loved.
That's why you're sitting here today.
Yeah. And so I could experience those religions, Christianity more so through school, I would say, because, you know, if you go to a Church of England school, there's like nominally a kind of Christian like overlay to what you're doing, right? You can't avoid it. It's not being rammed down your throat, but you can't avoid that you're going to have a Christian religious service at Christmas and Easter. You're not going to avoid a Bible reading at every assembly. So I could experience both of these and get quite a good handle on both of them, but whilst also being a little bit arm's length from both of them. I wasn't that deep into either of them. And then on from that, whatever journey I had that brought me here to be with Guruji and Bhakti Marga and practicing Vaishnavism. Yeah. So I'd say the other thing that I really got an insight from is experiencing my extended family. So while my own parents weren't particularly religious in their lane, so to speak, there were people in their families, like aunts and uncles, who I would see, some more than others, who were more religious.
Right.
And I could get a feel for the mindset, particularly on the Islamic side. There were 2 or 3 who were much more staunchly following Islam than my mother, which also caused problems, between her and her siblings, right? So, I'd say I wouldn't call it a unique view, but it's pretty different.
Well, it's a well-informed view, I think.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've always shared with people from my childhood, because my childhood wasn't particularly religious, but what I did was I moved a lot from country to country. And when you just get exposed to different cultures and different sort of religious groups, even just people of different types, even if you don't participate in it in a big way, just being exposed to it already informs you a lot, and it helps you expand your worldview in unique ways. And I think that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes it special. So I definitely get where you're coming from. So that makes sense. That's a little bit why also I think this is a good topic for us to dive into. Just that broad perspective is going to help us unpack this. Before we do that, though, I have to address your nails. Just saw you now. What's going on there? What's going on there?
Well, it is Saturday, and I do like to dress up at the weekend. No, that's
people don't know you. They gotta know.
That's my 7-year-old daughter, and one of the joys of being a dad with 2 girls is you're just a big doll.
You're a plaything for them.
So she painted one side, and then I think got bored and walked off, and I didn't get
Well, I think it looks great.
The other side. But yeah, I mean, you need acetone to get this stuff off. Like, it doesn't just wipe off. Yeah. So
yeah, great.
Enjoy it.
Thanks for the
what would you call that? Is that a kind of
is that lavender?
Lavender lilac. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. All right, let's do this. Let's unpack a little bit the topics. I think we can maybe start off with the institutionalization topic. I think the overriding theme, both for this question of institutionalization as well as the sect and cult thing, is general mistrust. My experience, at least when I've been dialoguing with people of all sorts of religions, is they enjoy the idea of spirituality and spiritual living and spiritual concepts. But the minute it gets institutionalized, for them, it's like, that's religion. Religion, that's sort of where they draw the line. And I've heard it being said to me before. It's like the idea of, for example, people like, how to put this? They like healing, but they don't like hospitals. If you get my meaning. So they enjoy the practice of the thing. They don't like the institutions. They like learning. They don't necessarily like the universities. And I think this is somehow this inbuilt mistrust that people have of institutions. And it starts to make me always go on the back foot of having to justify the existence of the institution to people. Why do religious movements have to have institutions in the first place? And I think the conversation from my side starts there. It's, at what point is it necessary? And is it at all necessary? Is it actually a redundant thing? Could we do it in a different sort of format? Because it helps people make their peace or not with it.
Well, I think the first thing is that people view institutions, particularly religious institutions, as agents of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to control me and my behavior. And
they are, aren't they? To an extent?
I think that may not have been the original intention.
Right.
But yes, it comes to that. It comes to that. Like, the thing that people are probably most aware of or have a feeling for in Europe is the church, right?
Right.
And the growth of the church. And I don't
Catholic Church, Vatican, all of this.
Well, I guess the church in general, because if you look at the history of the church, and I'm no expert, but all of the codifying and the hierarchy and the institutionalizing, it was a gradual process that came from the point where Jesus isn't there anymore, right? So you've got this divine personality who can impart what is needed in the moment to the person in real time and specific to them and their level of understanding and what they need to hear at that moment, then that divine personality goes, and you're left with some people who want to carry on spreading, as they say in Christianity, the good news.
Right.
We want to spread the good news. And in their anxiety to do that right, they more and more codify and form a doctrine. But then once you form a doctrine, you need a body to hold that doctrine and, dare I say, enforce the doctrine. Yeah. So, and that's why you had things like, I think in the early Christian church, it was called anathematization, where you say that church and that bishop who is preaching that doctrine, we no longer advocate that because this is now the doctrine that's been agreed in the council, and you are essentially exiled or excommunicated. And back then it was called anathematization, right? And it's this need to get everyone on the same page. But then in that anxiety to get everyone on the same page and believing the same thing, it becomes hardened. Yeah. And I think this kind of sclerosis, this kind of calcifying of things where the free and flexible exploration of what that divine personality was saying becomes something else.
Don't you think that's motivated by fear? Like from my analysis on it, it's always that is you have that phase of the charismatic leader, the founder, the formative sort of phase of the religious movement. And as you said, it's flexible only because the leader is capable of sort of monitoring and correcting where needed. And the minute he leaves, as you said, there's this immediate feeling of, now what? Like we need to continue it, but we also want to make sure we don't lose it. We don't sort of dilute it or change it in any sort of way. And I think people then, they do what you said, they codify it, rules, regulation, hierarchies, authority. And I think a lot of it is just out of this fear of we can't lose the amazing grace or the amazing teachings or practices, whatever that we had from him. And so we have to protect them, solidify them. And in doing so, it becomes extremely rigid and ironically less attractive than they were. And it creates a very different movement to what was originally intended. And I think it's borderline inevitable. I've never really seen any movement that doesn't follow that pattern. I mean, if you study sociology of religion, there are plenty of people that sort of speak on these sort of life cycles of religious movements. And it's almost always the same. It's very rare that you can think of any religious movement that bucks that trend.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, but I think the mistake that people make is that life cycle, they think that it happens in a very short space of time. And when you think that something's happened in a short space of time and you say, these people had an anxiety to make sure there was a doctrine and these people did X, Y, and Z, it sounds like it's happening virtually overnight. And there was this kind of cabal of people who got round a table and said, hey, we've got to write this all down and enforce it. But when you look at it historically, these things were happening over hundreds of years.
Right.
And it's just in the course of the expansion and growth of the following of that teaching that problems arise and had to be ironed out. Yeah. So like the major controversies in Christianity in the beginning, for example, were to do with the nature of Jesus.
Yeah.
So many of the controversies.
Christology,
Christology. What was he? Was he fully human and fully divine at the same time? Was he one unified divine being or
dual nature, etc.?
Yeah. Was he human in the beginning, but the divinity overtook that humanity? And then the other controversies were about the other persons in the Trinity, yeah? So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, is the Holy Ghost equal to them? All of that stuff. Yeah. And I guess there's an anxiety that, if we get this wrong, then it will affect the outcome for the individual who's following it. Yeah. And that's why they say, oh, well, we've got to codify it and get it right. And we'll have a council and we'll bash it out and we'll agree this is the doctrine. And then everyone can just sort of get on with the better things. Yeah. They don't have to be worried.
But I think in the example of Christianity, the institution obviously comes post-Christ, right? And so it's easy to sort of see the very, very human element to it and the very human sort of anxieties and thoughts and whatever concerns. I think in Bhakti Marga, in our case, we have an institution. It is Bhakti Marga. It's the organization, the movement founded by Paramahamsa Vishwananda. But obviously he's still very much alive, very much among us and teaching us. And so it creates almost a different scenario where I always feel like in some parts we are living that post-charismatic phase during the life of the charismatic leader, because he's very forward-thinking, Guruji. Like he thinks about what we're setting up for the future, what are the systems of authority and who's in charge and all of these things. He is very proactive about these things, but at the same time, it creates, I think, sometimes a conflict, an inner conflict in the movement where you have devotees who see him as this incredible being, transcendent, free, very adaptable, very flexible. I mean, Guruji is one of the most adaptable people I've ever met in my life, if not the most. He can really mold his way of speaking, behaving, everything to the circumstances that are in front of him. He's not rigid at all in that sense. But at the same time, he has created an organization and given us rules and regulations. We have protocol. We have an order of monks, nuns, devotees who all follow a variety of rules. And we are tasked with somewhat enforcing those protocols and those rules and those processes and all of that. And from my experience, it creates sometimes this resentment in the devotees where they feel like, I want him and I want everything that he brings to the table, seemingly, publicly, what they see, let's say, in front of the curtains of this freedom and flexibility and understanding. But I'm sort of annoyed by the organization that's asking me to comply with this and with that. And I resent that. So they resent that. I resent that resentment in a sense, because my feeling is, resentment maybe is a strong word, but I feel like if only they would know how much Guruji has asked for this and how much Guruji is also the person that orchestrates and is the architect of this institution. And here's like maybe just a very, very obvious thing to me at least, but maybe not to certain people. You reach a size where I don't know how it works to have a movement without the institution, because Guruji can't attend to thousands of people personally. He can't. Physically, in a sort of discernible external way.
Yeah, and you've more or less concurred with that birth story of Christianity, because in the beginning of Christianity, there were only a handful of people, that could be guided one-to-one or one-to-many, but by that divine personality. Then, so the story goes, whether it's, historically accurate or not, on Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came down on the apostles, and then they had this inner command to go and spread the mission. And immediately, one of the apostles, I can't remember, made a speech and converted 3,000 people, right? So immediately you've gone from a handful or a few hundred to 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And so if the following had been that size when Jesus was there, there's every chance that it did need to be institutionalized, because
you have to have a way of disseminating the message and the instructions and all of this. And I think a lot of people, they sometimes hear devotees from the early years with Guruji sharing their experiences and their stories, and they get jealous again. Jealous is a bit negative, but they say, oh, I wish I had that experience, the proximity, the sort of naturalness of it all. And I think that's the thing. On the one side, our hearts want to spread this as far and wide as it can go, because we have found something wonderful. And when you find something wonderful, you want to share it with people. But there's another part of you that goes, but every extra person that comes means less time for me. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with one of the residents here at the ashram a few years ago. And it was exactly about that. And they told me, my heart is so split in two. Like, because Guruji was encouraging us to spread what we've learned and to share and all of this. But she was openly telling me, she's like, but I'm not ready to sort of distance myself from him, letting go of that. And every extra person that walks through these doors means less time for me and less time for everyone. I mean, it's a net negative for everyone was the opinion at the time. And I've sort of tried to stay away from the idea that institutions are a necessary evil. I've heard this having been said many times about the Vatican and about all sorts of religious organizations. It's a necessary evil. I don't want to see it as evil because I'm a part of it. Right? I'm a part of this institution.
It's not evil. I think what it comes down to is maturity. Yeah. Because the thing is, what people are being asked to do, I can't necessarily speak for other religions, but in Bhakti Marga, what Guruji is asking people to do is to have an immense amount of maturity, yeah? And the story is basically something in your heart has called you to something bigger than what you know with your senses, yeah? You have some inherent feeling that there's more. Perhaps it's just your own knowledge of your own existence. You just think, well, I'm a conscious being and I know that I'm not just a very sophisticated algorithm. I can feel that there's something more to me than that. And then for whatever reason, that seed, that thought, that yearning has pulled you into the orbit of a master, or even we could just say into the orbit of spiritual instruction of any kind, right?
Agreed.
But you're then being asked to acknowledge the existence of something that you don't know firsthand. And the great wonder of Guruji and the great blessing of even just encountering once or a few times is you can see in him the truth of that suspicion you had. There's something more. Yeah. Because when he behaves miraculously, when he says something to you where you realize, oh, he knows me inside out, oh, he heard my prayer, or he knew something that happened to me in the past, or he knows a desire of mine, you say there's some field of existence beyond what I know, yeah, that is beyond space and time, and he is it, or he's tapping into it. You don't even have to go mad on trying to define Guruji. Right. Yeah, you can just see there's something there special. And that gives you the faith to try and know that in fullness, yeah? Because the moment you're told there's some part of you that you don't really know truly, you're like, well, then I can't be complete. Surely I'm not complete if I don't know that part of myself. And then you embark on a journey to know yourself. But if your whole life you've been programmed, not in a nefarious way from some outside agency, just because of the way society runs and the way you are as a human being when you first come into the world, that no, this is all you are. It's a great leap of faith and a great amount of discipline needed to break free of that and to know yourself as bigger than what you know yourself to be now. And the problem is we don't have the maturity to do the work. I before you say, there's one thing, because I don't want to forget it. I saw this loop or
reel.
Yeah. I saw this reel where I don't know whether it's true, but I've seen things like it, like in books like Power of Habit and other books about how we work and how we operate. This guy was saying that if you just do like 20 minutes a day of any particular thing, learning an instrument, learning a language, but you do it every day. The main thing is the doing it every day. You will be better than 95% of people at that thing. Yeah. Right? Now, if that's true, and I don't know what the data is on that. I haven't investigated it, but I've heard other things like it, and I've seen data-driven examples where, all you need is to do something regularly.
Seems logical.
Yeah. Yet no one does it because our natural state is not one of discipline and consistency.
Agreed.
Yeah. And we are disciplined and consistent when we're forced to be. So for instance, I have a duty to my children. I have to do it. Yeah, there's nothing that's going to.
But that's driven out of necessity, right? I'd say we are actually quite consistent people in two facets. The one driven out of necessity, as you just pointed out, and the one for which is pleasure seeking.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be told to eat every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know that you could argue
You'll hunt down that ice cream.
That's it. You can argue it's a necessity, but I know that I eat beyond my necessities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we all do. So I think there is we are disciplined in some respects.
Yeah. But for instance, anyone who goes to a gym, but has gains, gets the gains, right? They'll all tell you will not experience anything for months, but just stay in the game. And there's even these reels that are like designed to motivate you and pump you up, right? But when you go to a gym, the best thing you can do is have a routine and a program. Go every day, and then have arm day, have leg day, and arm day and leg day look a certain way. Yeah, and it almost becomes automatic. Yeah, you're so in the routine. That is what an institution does, in my view. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a well-functioning, well-meaning institution that's not designed for control is designed to give you the discipline that you don't have yourself.
It's organized spirituality.
Yeah,
and organization is a plus. It's not a negative.
Yeah,
and I think, to touch upon two of the things you mentioned, one is the maturity one, and then I'll talk on this one first. I think that's a big role of the institutionalization. It's creating organization where there is otherwise quote unquote freedom, but really it's just a free for all fantasy land.
Yeah.
And I think people need to be willing to submit to that. If you think you're going to transition from material living, an uncontrolled mind, to the perfect path, and immediate progress and immediate realizations, doing it your own way, regulated by yourself with no controlling mechanisms whatsoever, it's delusional. It really is delusional. And I think people need to embrace that in a non-judgmental way. It's not that we're pointing the finger and saying you're all stupid. It's we're all conditioned. And that doesn't make you stupid, it makes you conditioned. It's like a sick person. A sick person can't be blamed for being sick, but factually you're sick.
Yeah.
And if you accept that, you can take the smartest route out of that sickness. And it's the same thing here. It's like, okay, as you were just saying, the data may support this, that if you perform an organized sort of set of practices, methodical, consistent, addressing the exact root issues that are making you conditioned, that are making you quote unquote sick, you're going to heal much better than a sort of scattered random approach. And I think I fully agree with you in the sense that what it should be, the institution, is that. It's the systematized approach to this that is able to disseminate to anyone in any situation that doesn't require the physical presence of the leader of whatever it is, because it's just a well-oiled machine that helps you. It takes you 90% of the way. I will always say that there are things the institution can never provide, because life is a bit too customized to the individual that the institution can't fully accommodate all of that. But if it gets you 90% of the way, that's fantastic. The other point about maturity, I think people need to start to see things in a different way. I think a lot of the hang-ups people have with institutions is the loss of freedom, the loss of personality and individualism, because they feel like they become just a number, right? A replica of others, a robot. I'm supposed to follow the same rules, dress the same way, attend the same events, whatever else, and meet the same criteria as everyone else. And I think I understand the concern and the fear of individualism, but I also think it ties into people's understanding of what spirituality truly is meant to be. Because if you buy into the Vedic conception, especially the Vaishnava conception, of the false ego, that we're actually wrongly identifying with ourselves and who we think we are is not who we really are, and there has to be a sadhana, as a practice-based transition from who you're not to who you really are, then you look at the organization and say, if this is in any way diminishing my individualism, in any way diminishing my quote-unquote freedoms, it's actually to my benefit, because it just gives me a vehicle by which I can gradually relinquish this notion of who I think I should be and who I want to be and who I am. I can relinquish that and then serve. It's a vehicle of service, and service is one of the key things that we talk about in our path that helps you transition from someone who wants to be served, a pleasure-seeking individual, which is what human beings are. Doesn't matter religion, doesn't matter. Just this is general observation about human beings. We seek pleasure. We seek gratification. The idea of relinquishing that in favor of seeking to serve in any capacity. I'm not making it specific now to serving a deity or God or whatever, but just service, using the tools that you have to make a difference in this world and the difference in the lives of others. It makes you, in a positive way, forget yourself. I don't mean neglect yourself, because you're not being neglected by this process. If you really give yourself to service, the beauty of it is that you're not neglected. You are satisfied, you are made happy. And if everyone participates in this service culture, you'll always have what you need, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally correct. And if people could just stick with this one truth,
yeah,
that I don't think gets voiced actually anywhere, or maybe it does and I'm not aware enough, but if people could understand that you have to win your happiness like you have to win anything else, yeah? If they could just understand that, because the problem is, it's this feeling in the material world that if I get whatever I want, yeah, and that happiness is something effortless. There's an effortlessness to happiness, and it's effort that makes me unhappy, yeah? And that is actually the kind of ill and corruption of society that we live in at the moment. People have never had so much, they've never had it so easy, and they've never been so unhappy, right?
That's true.
So the thing is, in the same way as you win your strength in the gym, in the same way as you win your poise over your body and your brilliance in martial arts in a dojo,
your intelligence at school,
your intelligence at school, your happiness is to be won. Yeah. So you are not born in the natural state of understanding mathematics, yeah, but you win it, yeah, and you're better for it, yeah. You understand the world better for having that knowledge. Likewise, happiness is to be won. It isn't given to you. It's not innate, yeah. And if you truly hold on to that, then I think you'll, one, have discipline,
yeah,
and see the benefit of consistency, but you'll also understand that in the same way that I'm willing to go to a dojo and completely submit to that kung fu master, right, and do whatever he says to train me in that art, I will likewise go to a guru and understand that he has laid out a particular path that will get me to a certain state, and that I can either do it well and consistently and with discipline, or I can do it in a haphazard way and kind of go, oh, do I have to do it today? And the result will be the same in this arena as it is in that arena. Yeah. My daughter doesn't do her piano practice. She gets rusty. She's not as good. Crack the whip and say, you got to do your practice. And
not literally.
Depends if I've got the nail polish on. I think that's it. You have to win your happiness, and everyone should think about the times when they are happy. Yeah, it's a kind of satisfaction and fulfillment that comes at the end of effort. Yeah, really. When you're really happy, it's like, I've achieved something, I've done something, I've improved myself, I'm better. That happiness of pleasure and leisure is so short-lived, and it's an illusion.
Well, I fully agree. I mean, even to go to the Gita, Krishna talks about the different types of happiness. And he speaks about rajasic happiness as exactly that. It's pleasurable in the beginning, but then ends up as poison. Whereas the sattvic happiness, the higher happiness, is poison at first and ends up in happiness, in nectar. And I've always sort of pointed out that the most important part of this is that it's poison at first, and you have to persevere to get to the true nectar at the end of it. And people have this idea that if something is really good and really is going to bring you true happiness, it should be good all the way through. Like, if it brings you any discomfort, it's not meant for you. It's discard it. It's not good. You shouldn't feel that way about things that are good. It should always be natural and happy and great. And I just think there's no support for that. It's not true. There's no, like, if you observe the world, you see that there's no support for this. If you see the scriptures, there's no support in this. If I listen to Guruji speak, there's no support in this, because he talks about purification, transformation. And so I think people need to embrace the grind. They need to embrace that, exactly what you've been saying. You got to work for it. You got to earn it. And I think if they just shift that mentality, the things they're complaining about, or that their mind tells them to complain about, let's say, about organizations and institutions and rules and consistency and discipline and all these things, start to, at the very least, make sense to them. If not, be something that they actually actively embrace.
Yeah, and also you can't complain and say that something's not serving you until you've done it for a certain period and tested, oh, okay, this isn't serving me. And, the mind complains because the mind is fueled by complaint. It lives by complaint. Yeah, that's
fault
what.
Finding. I mean,
yeah.
I think another thing is when you join an organization or when you come to a religious movement in the beginning, you're coming there for your personal needs. Like you obviously have a need that you've identified that you want to solve. And I think what sometimes puts people off, and I want to address it so that people understand a little bit where I'm coming from with this, is that they'll join the organization and very quickly they'll be told to serve the purposes of the organization instead of their own. So for example, the organization needs money to sustain its temples and whatever else. And so you're asked to contribute or to go out and make money for the organization. Or the organization needs to propagate and grow and accrue more devotees or whatever it may be. And suddenly you're working. Like you came to run away from the stresses of work life and all of these sort of things in your material life. And then you come to a religious movement, a spiritual movement, to drink from the fountain, right? To get nourished. And within minutes, you're asked to go and work for the purposes of the organization. And I think people sometimes develop resentment for that. And I think it's wrong. And I think they need to understand why I think it's wrong. And that's because it's not that you're being asked to work for the benefit of the organization at the cost of what's good for you. It's that what's good for the organization is also good for you. And the reason I say that is because the organization, and especially in our case, in Bhakti Marga's case, it's much easier to trust that because Guruji is around. The person who you have placed your trust in as your guru, who knows what's best for you and you at this point in time believe is acting for your benefit, that person is also guiding the activities and projects and sort of daily operation of that organization. He's on top of that. And so what the organization is trying to achieve, for example, in opening ashrams, he sees that as the greatest benefit for you, even if you don't see it. You think you just want to go listen to some bhajans, meditate in a forest, and that's what's best for you. He has a different opinion. And so that transition of I'm going to trust the doctor's opinion rather than my own of how I'm going to heal, for example, makes you not compliant out of obedience, not compliant because out of ignorance, but compliant out of a positive affirmation that I trust and know that what you're prescribing is for my personal benefit, even if it's an indirect benefit. I'm not addressing my immediate, personal, perceptible needs, but by serving this mission, by spreading this, by creating the temples and the ashrams and whatever else it is, by distributing these books, whatever it may be, I am actually filling a much deeper hole inside of me. I'm giving myself the tools and the community and whatever else that is actually going to solve my issues at a deeper level. Because I think that most people, and this I've experienced as a Swami so many times because people come to me asking for advices and so many things. They recognize they're sick. They want to treat the symptoms. They don't want to treat the sickness all the time. So they say, I'm unhappy, right? And they say, can you help me learn to enjoy puja or temple prayers or reading the Bhagavad Gita? So can you give me a fleeting moment of happiness? Can you help me enjoy something like that? And I often tell them that no, I can't, because it would be irresponsible of me to say that that's the solution. To sort of just say, oh, do you know what? Let me just give you a better musician that you enjoy a little bit more, and then it will solve all your problems because you'll enjoy the music more, the musicality of it. No, it's something deeper. You have to actually, you have to address what is at the core of it. What is at the core of it in the sense of, why don't you enjoy the kirtan? Why don't you enjoy the temple prayers? And don't answer me because you don't like the musicians or because you don't like the aesthetics of the temple. Go deeper And I think when you go deeper, you realize that it's often a mixture of things. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think it's relevant in one way. It's a mixture of things. For example, you're afraid of letting go of the world you do know and the comforts that you do have. You're afraid of what's coming because you don't know what's coming. So what happens if I do give myself to all of this? What happens if I do place my life in the hands of God? And so often you find that people don't enjoy things, not because the things aren't enjoyable, but because they're just resisting. They have a mindset that isn't compatible with it. And that mindset is the root thing that needs to change. And so it's like, okay, maybe the solution to the problem of you not enjoying prayers is not go to prayers 20 more times. It's change your mindset. So do some japa, analyze yourself, introspect, talk to people, be around people that inspire you to be better. And that leads me on to the critical point I wanted to make about institutions. They give you community, whether you think you need it or not. And then once you're in it, you invariably see, I did need this. Not because it's fun every time, but because what I stand to learn from watching everyone else walk the same path I'm trying to walk, I could never get if I was doing this by myself. If I was having this free, uninstitutionalized religion where I'm just sort of doing my own thing. And I can tell you, as much as I have seen people around me do things that I am not inspired by, in the sense that I don't want to do that, when you do meet that one person that has one trait, it doesn't have to be everything. There's no perfect people around here. But when you meet one person that has a particular quality, a particular competence in something, it inspires me in such a way that nothing else does. Like I look at that and I go, I want to be more like that, and I'm going to push myself. And the more time I spend with that person, the more I get almost like motivation out of nowhere. And that then is the crux for me. I think most people know what's good for them. I don't think they need to be told. I think most people just lack the motivation. We were talking about discipline.
Do you mean within Bhakti Marga? Or?
Yeah. Not in the wider world. I think in the wider world, people do have an internal compass. They generally do know what's better and worse for them, although with quite a bit of error there still. But I think in Bhakti Marga, for example, once you've heard 3 or 4 satsangs from Guruji, lectures, right? Once you've participated in a devotee course, you broadly know what you should be doing. Do some meditation, do some Atmakriya yoga, chant your japa, go to the temple, read some Bhagavad Gita. Like most people know this. If you ask any devotee, should you be reading Bhagavad Gita? They'll say, yes, I should. Are you? Maybe not. And so the only thing I see missing there is motivation. It's the drive, it's the motivation. And I've been sort of diving into that, and I'm curious to hear what you think about where motivation comes from, because you talked about discipline, and that's obviously linked.
Yeah.
But motivation for me seems to be that golden ingredient.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying that once you're in the environment that can bring you more consistency and discipline, you nonetheless can be led to water but not made to drink. And that has to come from within you. Yeah. Like Guruji even says, I can get the food, prepare the food, chew the food, put it in your mouth. Yeah. All you have to do is swallow, and then you're even not prepared to do that. I think one of the things is that even though earlier I said you're trying to win happiness, that it's not, it's a happiness that is enduring, and along the way to achieving that comes in, moments of kind of, I don't want to say euphoric experience, but different experience. Yeah. You gain a perspective that you've never had. There's something that happens internally. And I think most people that have been on a spiritual path, that keeps them in the game. Yeah, they have certain experiences where they're like, yes, that's a glimpse of the ultimate happiness that I'm striving for. But the happiness doesn't come like that. Yeah, it's something that requires patience and endurance and consistency. And I think that the motivation can only come from really understanding the magnitude of what you will ultimately have. And again, we come back to doctrine and belief systems and why there's so much anxiety about, knowing the nature of God, knowing the nature of yourself, knowing what you attain when you realize those things. What is eternity? What is all of this stuff? Because when you really focus on that aim, it's the thing is, it's more than happiness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the full meaning of everything. It's the highest truth, and it is your highest happiness because bliss is what you are, right? So it's happiness and beyond. It's absolute, It's non-relative. It's by absolute I mean that it's the kind of love and happiness that you never would have the sense that I can have more bliss than this. It's a certain completeness. You're literally striving for completeness, and if you hold on to the magnitude of what you're doing, and again, that's where I think the guru is such a blessing, because he's the constant reminder. One thing that Guruji keeps saying at the moment is all of this is just a reminder. I'm just a reminder. The guru's just a reminder. Of the magnitude of what you're going for. And I think that if you can hold to that, so when someone does something incredible, like we go to the moon, or someone wins a Grand Slam, they will go through all manner of discipline and pain and heartache and knockbacks and everything you can imagine, because the goal is so profound and big for them, and they believe it's possible. They believe it's possible, and that is bound up in Guruji as well. First of all, you see the magnitude of what we're going for, and you see the possibility of it, and then you go for it. And I think that's where it comes from.
I fully agree, but don't you think there's so many ingredients that have to come together for that to work? So there's like knowledge of what's possible and knowledge of that goal you're aiming for.
That's where the knowledge on.
Right. And then you have to have the drive and the discipline and the motivation. You have to have expertise of someone guiding you to that place. Otherwise, you're just on a journey of sort of random discovery. Maybe I can do this, maybe I can't. And so there's so many things that have to come together. And isn't that really the purpose of the institution? It's to put all of these things at your disposal in front of you, almost like so that you can passively consume those things. Like you're just constantly exposed to the structures that are there to help you to advance as much as can be done. Because I was thinking, what really helps me walk this path towards that God realization, that ultimate truth? Knowledge helps me. It's always helped me to understand, to know myself more deeply, to know God, to know this world, all of these things. But it can't be dry. It can't just be theoretical. So I've got to feel, because feeling drives me forward. It makes me want more. So, okay, I need to go sing in the temple. I need to go do something, right? And then I sometimes start questioning myself. Am I getting it wrong now? Like, have I got something inside of me that I'm not seeing, like a black spot on your nose, that kind of thing. And so I need someone that I trust to be able to look at me and correct me. And how on earth are you supposed to get all these things if you're just sitting at home practicing solo spirituality? This is what I can't wrap my head around. And people who try to defend this, people who try to say that that's a superior form of religion or spirituality, I don't want to be rude, but the word delusion just keeps coming back to me. I don't understand the benefits that will bring compared to when you're living in an environment that is constantly pushing you towards these things. If I don't want to think of Guruji, or if I don't want to think of God because I'm just so immersed in my selfishness right now, I almost can't, because I'm living in the ashram. Everywhere I walk, I have a picture of Guruji around, or I have people talking about philosophy and God. And it pulls me back to where I should be. It pulls me back to something that is beneficial to me by my environment. Otherwise, I have to go and create it myself.
Well, I mean, my feeling about those people you describe who say, I can do it all alone. I think there are two categories. One is that they're just amazing fluke individuals. Yeah, like they're like almost saints who then don't need to do much to get over the line to sainthood and
from previous lives.
Yeah. Then there's another category of people, and I think everyone has maybe been this actually at some point. Like people in Bhakti Marga, I think I've been this, right? Where, like, to use that going to the moon analogy again, right? If you can't fly, you know, we don't have the capacity to fly as human beings, but you somehow develop a plane, yeah? And you ascend into the air and you're like, wow, I've defied gravity. This is the most amazing thing. Oh my God. I think you can be so enamored by that change that you don't even consider that you could go to the moon, right? And so it's often, because I've met people like this, and they're often the people who like, you know, but I've experienced these things and, you know, I felt this real peace or this real bliss. But I don't think what they've experienced is the profound fullness of everything, right? And yes, you can absolutely achieve that stuff on your own. Absolutely. If you have a bit of discipline, you like meditation, you like going within, yeah, I think you can.
I do get that. I think it's just a more question of what are the odds, you know, that you're the 1 out of 100 that's going to succeed in that way. And I would rather recommend people to be more humble and reasonable about this.
Most people are, I think that a lot of us, I know, for instance, that I was doing spiritual reading, yeah? I know that I was dipping in and out of stuff and I'm by no means saying that I'm like super disciplined now, yeah?
Sure.
But I know that it was very flaky, right?
Yeah.
And that's just my nature, I guess, you know, like having that little bit of solace for that moment and that almost that idea of I'm going towards something higher was enough to keep me going than actually striving to realize that idea. And then when you encounter Guruji and you're like, well, I thought it was real, but now I actually know it's real. Guruji's a massive challenge because he's saying, well, it is real. Do you really want it then? Yeah. And then when he lays down that challenge, you are compelled to either strive or say, no, I'm happy with a kind of shallowness. Yeah. And a lot of people say, yeah, I'm going to go for it. Yeah. And this is what Bhakti Marga is.
Yeah.
A bunch of people who said, no, I want to go for it. Yeah. I see in you that which I want. Okay. And the thing is, it's still difficult.
Yeah.
It's still difficult. And it's that much more massive. It's more difficult than what you were doing before because it's so much bigger. It's suddenly so much bigger. Yeah. Like it's real. Yeah. You're going to do it. And when it's so big, I think that human nature is such that it is consistency, discipline, that need for help, that need for guidance, it's just becomes doubly important or 100-fold more important. And you still, some of that discipline needs to come from within. But like you said, if you know, every time you go on YouTube, for example, the algorithms pushed a satsang from Guruji and you watch it and, oh, Guruji's speaking to me. Or, you know, you see in your calendar, oh, Janmashtami is coming up. I'm going to make the effort to go to the ashram. Or, you know, you just live nearby to an ashram and there's someone in orange and you just get that pang of, oh yeah, I should probably go to prayers today. I haven't been for a while.
Right.
Then it's a set of guardrails that just keep you in the game, right?
But I actually want to make that point clear. When I say that this is an environment that supports your spiritual growth, I don't mean just physically, like so you have to live near an ashram or in an ashram or anything like that. Because I feel like, for example, the YouTube video, of Guruji. That's an extension of the organization, of the institution.
Of course it is, yeah.
Because, you need structure and money and all of these things to make those things available. So when you're sitting at home, you can sit there and participate in the organization, in the institution, by consuming all of these things that are beneficial for you. And I think that's sometimes a thing that people forget. Love doesn't pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a derogatory way, but definitely people need to sometimes be reminded of that. And so there are certain things this world, works by, certain rules, and you sort of have to. There is a necessity to all of this. There's a necessity to the organization. And I think I just want to probably, from my side at least, wrap this up from my thoughts on it, because we've talked a lot about, I think, some of the positive elements that the organization brings to the table, organizing your life and organizing your heart and mind in a way that you sort of lean less on fantasy and sort of a free-for-all. I think there are two things I would have to mention I feel like are very important for especially the followers of Bhakti Marga to listen to. Firstly, advancing in the institution doesn't mean advancing spiritually. If you get a role of responsibility in the institution because you're competent in a particular area, circumstances align for your service to be given in that way, this doesn't equal advancement in bhakti, advancement in spiritual life, so to speak. And I think if people were to, first of all, just understand that, they would look at the organization with far less judgment on the one side and hunger on the other side of like, I want positions and titles and responsibility because that means I'm greater. And those who don't get it don't need to look at those people and think, why is that person there? They're not better than me, and all of those kind of things that always happen in hierarchies and very human institutions, right? As I have to say that because I feel like it's a constant issue in all institutions. We look at the people at the top and think they must be the best. It's not like that. Guruji has made that point abundantly clear. And we don't need to mix the domains of the material competency that is often needed to run an organization. We need architects, we need construction people, we need lawyers, we need all sorts of people. That doesn't mean that they are saints. It doesn't mean that they are great bhaktas. It can be that the person scrubbing the floor is the greatest bhakta of them all, right? So we need to make that point abundantly clear. And the second pitfall, I think, of the organization is that we have to constantly check ourselves. We have to constantly look in the mirror and see if we're still aligned with the words and the instructions of our spiritual master, of Guruji, in this case, Paramahamsa Vishwananda. Because as much as we can say, and I do believe this, that we are an extension of him. He has said it himself, Bhakti Marga is an extension of myself. It doesn't mean that we're infallible. People who have been given responsibilities within the organization are still human. And so when I say that Guruji's monitoring, he's on top of things, he's part of this organization and we're an extension of him, I don't say, in saying that, I'm not saying everything that goes on in the organization is perfect. And I'm excusing everything. And everyone forever now, from this point onwards, has to have this sort of blind faith and trust that everything is perfect. I'm not saying that. And I think as an introspection, we always have to look at ourselves and think, am I complying? Because Guruji is critical of the organization sometimes, openly so, not just in private, not only speaking to us individuals. He will sometimes openly say, they didn't listen to some instruction that I gave. Yeah. And for me, that isn't a sign that you shouldn't trust, or that isn't a sign that you shouldn't help. It's a sign that we're human. We're all human, and we're all obviously struggling with the same issues: an uncontrolled mind, personal desires, misidentification, all these sorts of things. So I think my final request almost to people who are not affiliated with Bhakti Marga, and then to the Bhakti Marga people, is look at organizations and try to be as fair and grounded in your approach to it as possible, which is understand the purposes for why they are created in the first place. It's to organize, disseminate, to handle mass size, right? If it was just a mission of 5 people or 12 disciples in the case of Jesus, you don't need any organization because you're there, hands-on. We are obviously not living in that reality, and we don't want to. We want this to reach as many people as possible. So therefore, embrace the need for it. And after you've embraced the need for it, whether this be an Islamic organization, Christian, Hindu, it doesn't matter. In your own context, embrace the need for it. Once you've understood the essential need for it, then we can transfer on to the and how is it executed phase. And in that, I agree, sort of we have to have conversations, introspection, transparency, honesty, and all these sorts of things. It helps a lot build trust in the institution. But for Bhakti Marga people now specifically, I would say trust in your guru. He's a very hands-on guru. And talk to people. If you want to understand something, ask, talk. Right now we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think we're all open to having these conversations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that all makes great sense. And the thing that I think that Bhakti Marga does that is most important, actually, having heard you say all that, is to get Guruji to you wherever you are and whatever you're doing. And quite right, that couldn't happen without some kind of organizational apparatus. And if you feel you benefit from that, so, we don't live in the first century where you can only benefit from the instruction and grace of your master by being there in person.
Yeah.
Or at best receiving a letter, because they were sending letters to each other. It's all epistles, isn't it? Yeah, the
Pigeons.
epistles of Paul.
Yeah.
You can in real time experience your master wherever you are in the world, but that can't just happen like that in a vacuum. And what you put in is what you get out.
Yeah.
So the many people putting themselves in mean that you also are receiving that benefit.
It's a cycle of service.
Yeah, there is a cycle. And, to be able to be on a boat or in Australia when Guruji's in Germany and still experience in real time that connection is a wonderful thing that couldn't happen without an institution.
Yeah, I agree.
And, to put yourself into that and make it happen for you and everyone else, you win and everyone wins, right?
Well, it's help us help you, right?
Yeah,
and I think we say the same in reverse. And I feel like on that level, Bhakti Marga is actually quite phenomenal, to be honest, because any devotee, doesn't matter where they are, the minute they're initiated as devotees, they have access to an educational platform that can keep them busy with knowledge for hours and hours, a year plus. They have the ability to follow Guruji around the world with virtual pilgrimages, video content, so many things. And I just feel like no matter where you are in the world, if you're able to participate in this cycle of service, you're always going to get plenty back from it. But as I said, I think the most important thing is if you feel that that's not the case, if anyone feels that's not the case, in any context, approach that organization and that institution and talk. Just talk, because it helps us to understand how to serve you. But I'm happy with that, and I think it's important people come to terms with the necessity and the benefit of the organization so that they stop demonizing it. It doesn't need to be. Organizations don't need to be. Institutions don't need to be demonized. Maybe in a future episode, if it makes sense, we could talk a little bit more about that post sort of charismatic leader thing, because there's a lot to unpack there, and you can observe in Christianity and in pretty much every other religion. After the leader does leave, there are very clear patterns, elitist schisms, and all sorts of things. For Bhakti Marga, it's irrelevant. We're not anywhere near that stage, and so we don't need to go into it now. But I think there's more to unpack there. But I'm happy with that. You?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for the cult and sect thing, what I want to do, if you're good with it, I want to read Oxford Dictionary definition of those terms.
Oh.
Cult, sect, and religion.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think that will give us plenty to work with to sort of unpack what the issue here is. And I think firstly, it's just similarly with institutionalization, people use these terms as pejoratives. It's a negative thing. Oh, it's a cult. It's a sect. And I find that to be hypocritical, massively hypocritical. And I think my great challenge that I would like to pose today is, once we've seen these definitions, then either Bhakti Marga isn't a cult or a sect. Great.
Or everything else is.
Or everything else is too. I'm not playing it any other way, so let's get to it. Cult. So a cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. I mean, right there, it's almost like every religion possible fits into this, but okay. A sect is a group of people with somewhat different religious beliefs, typically regarded as heretical from those of a larger group to which they belong. And a religion is the belief and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. However, these are just the basic definitions. When you just dig one result deeper on a Google search, for example, you'll get an alternative definition of a cult, which is: cult is a term in most contexts pejorative for a relatively small group, which is typically led by a charismatic and self-appointed leader who excessively controls its members, requiring unwavering devotion to a set of beliefs and practices which are considered deviant. Right? By who, I don't know. And then literally there's a quote I found this morning, just as I was coming here, that I think hits the nail on the head. The quote, I don't know who said this, but the quote is as follows: a cult is an unpopular religion, and a religion is a popular cult. And I think that's exactly it. What are your initial thoughts on that?
It is tough because, like, if you think about Waco in Texas, this cult, and then the Jonestown cult,
Jim Jones, all this,
then you're like, there are some nefarious things out there that need to be guarded against, because Jonestown ended in the massacre where they all poisoned themselves, right?
Mass suicide, right?
On the orders of the cult leader, and that fits into the definition. But then there are other things that are far from nefarious and look very much like mainstream religion that also fall into the definition. And this is the problem with words and labels, that it's a blunt instrument which captures something that is edifying and good for the adherents. And they say, no, I'm happy and I'm free to do this and I'm doing this willingly. Well, actually, both of them would say that they're free and they're doing it willingly. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. But from the outside looking in, you would say, well, you guys ended up by taking your lives and you guys are maybe doing some odd things, but it's not dangerous. It's just different from what I'm into. Right. And it's very hard because there must, well, I guess my instinct is to say there must be more nuanced definitions and a deepening that needs to be done, a more deeper interrogation.
Yeah, analysis, like a deeper analysis, investigation.
And perhaps the real problem is the societal problem of let's just chuck out an accusation without even thinking you're a cult. Yeah. And, you said at the beginning that some people would say that Bhakti Marga is a cult. And if you interrogate more deeply, you would see, well, there are the hallmarks of religion. And actually, the only difference really between Bhakti Marga and a mainstream religion is numbers.
And time.
And time.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure if you interrogate things about Jonestown, you would see things that are very specific to that, or that kind of danger. I think what it is people associate cults with danger. Yeah, is this dangerous to the person, to the individual? Brainwashing and
restriction, danger. Full submission and obedience and all these sort of things. I think this is the right way to go about it. Let's just do away with the terms for a bit and let's just discuss what the real concerns are, right?
Yeah.
When people look at Bhakti Marga, they think, well, here's a guru. He requests obedience and service and they worship him. That's enough, basically, to make people very, very dubious of it all and to you start using these pejoratives, right? And I think that there's two ways I want to address this. Firstly, if you look at Christianity, especially in its early days, we're looking at Jesus because that's what you have to do. If you're looking at Christianity, there's no point judging it by what it is now. He was exactly this. If you look at the Gospel of John, I mean, I can literally pick out so many quotes that talk about exclusivity of truth. Only Jesus is the way, right? And absolute surrender, submission, obedience. 14:15, 15:14, he says, he goes as far as to say, you're only my friends if you obey my commands. If you obey what I tell you to do, then only you can be my friends. If you love me, obey my commands. It's all in the Gospel of John. And I look at that and I think, isn't this just standard religious practice that here comes a person, let's just theoretically talk about this. Here comes a person who knows something you don't about God, about the nature of reality. They know it for certain, and they look at humanity and they say, I want to help them. And they see that humanity doesn't help itself. Like our tendencies, our ignorance makes us take such awful decisions all the time. Yet they'll come to us because they're touched by our transcendence of the individual and say, I want to follow you. Isn't it reasonable that person would look at them and say, but you need to follow my instructions because I cannot take responsibility for you if you're not willing to follow my instructions. It's the same thing. A doctor will not ever take responsibility for the actions of a patient if they don't follow their own instructions. The doctor says, you've got to follow the prescription, follow what I'm saying you, then you'll get healed. If you do your own thing, if you freestyle, I can't take responsibility for what's about to happen. You go to a jungle, you're following the guide. The guide says, look, if you don't listen to me, you can get killed in here, right? But if you follow what I'm telling you, you'll get through this jungle safely, yeah? I don't see any difference in the model, yeah? But where I do agree with you fully is that we have to have common sense and you have to have logical, I think, frameworks by which you can assess a claim that is being made by somebody and say, is this nonsensical or is there something to this? In the case of Guruji and Bhakti Marga, it isn't anything like a Jim Jones situation because he's first of all saying, yes, I am a guru, he's enlightened, whatever, we should submit. Two key points here, first of all. It's a voluntary submission from our side. And it's at all times voluntary. I can back out, I can come in at any time I want, first of all. Second, he's not teaching innovations that have never been taught before. He is following a tradition. We are Vaishnavas within Hinduism. We do japa, we do Kriya Yoga, we do puja, and all of this, even if there are some differences here and there, is rooted in thousands of years of tradition. This is not something being made up. As much as sometimes Bhakti Marga devotees would like to say, Guruji is a revolutionary, it's iterations. He's just changing, it's iterative. Yeah, it's not a revolution in many ways. And I think people need to come to terms with this. And I think this touches upon something else, which is most of these accusations of cults and sects come from Western audiences. This isn't something that Indians are broadly concerned with unless they've been westernized. And I've lived in India and I can sort of attest to this. And it's, I think, quite and I usually don't like to accuse people of this, but it's quite a bigoted and sort of Hindu-phobic lens with which people view things because, and again, I do recognize the existence of the Jim Joneses of this world. But
can I play devil's advocate?
Go for it.
I think that there are quite a lot of charlatans in India.
There are.
And there are a lot of people,
and that's a shame,
who put themselves up as gurus in India. But I think what it comes down to is intention. Yeah. Because if the intention of the leader of the movement or the mission is selfish, for instance, I want to enrich myself, I want to gain power over people, and, it's all basically narcissistic, then that can corrupt anything. Yeah. So you can insert yourself into a tradition and you can use, in fact, it's almost easier in India because the extent to which the guru is upheld gives you that opportunity to insert yourself and say, well, I'm one of those and I'm only here for your benefit and follow me and give me your money, right? And there are plenty of them. So really, I think it's for it's a very nuanced, and it requires a lot of analysis, a lot of experience of the situation to come to the conclusion, or to answer the question rather, is this self-serving or is it for the service of the adherents?
Yeah, no, I take your point. 100%.
Yeah, and when maybe that is the barometer by which you can separate the good from the bad, yeah? Because certainly we cannot just say that because something is small and heterodox that it's wrong and bad for those people. Yeah. You just can't do that. Yeah. Otherwise, we're living in a monotone society where that's totalitarianism. Yeah. To say anything heterodox or different or off the wall or offbeat is wrong, is crazy. But we now live in that society. We're becoming more and more totalitarian in terms of ideas and what you're allowed to believe and what you're allowed to think. Yeah,
which is weird, given people think of our times as being highly progressive, but there's a very different undercurrent going on of restricting our,
don't deviate.
Thought, speech, everything else.
Don't deviate from the given from on high narrative, yeah? But that's plainly wrong. And and we see examples of persecution of sects that the mainstream religion views as heterodox. For example, Sufis are not well regarded by the mainstream Sunnis, and what's the other one? The Ahmadis or whatever. And so, but really, are those people coming to harm because of what they're following?
Yeah.
Right. I know they're a bit different because they're not rooted in a charismatic leader, but the principle remains. But then, if you go to sort of a Jonestown situation and you look mentally unhinged, obviously self-serving, and then was it to the ultimate benefit of the adherents that they committed mass suicide, right? And you can only really know from inside.
Yeah, that's I was going to come to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact is that when you, for instance, know Guruji and you know the work that he does and the incessant traveling and the modest way that he lives, you have a very clear picture that it's not self-serving. Yeah. And also when you've stuck to the path, felt the benefit, felt the inner transformation, and you just say, but I know for a fact that this is benefiting me. I, as a rational, ordinarily skeptical individual who nonetheless has seen something in Guruji, has had some faith, has followed it, benefited from it, and also can see that everything that's being done is of a service to everyone else, not to be served, in a selfish way back. Then you're not in a cult situation, right?
I think a major thing you touched upon is there are just so many charlatans, right?
Oh, so many.
That not really. And it makes me feel sorry because it means that the landscape is damaged, right? That the spiritual, religious, guru landscape is damaged to a point of no return, in my opinion. And it's therefore the reasonable position to be skeptical. It's the reasonable position to be doubting and scrutinize. And I think here there's a new problem, which is because of social media in general, but the internet in general. It's not social media only. It's just the internet in general. We're able to have very superficial experiences of people that wasn't the case before. So, for example, Satya Sai Baba. If you heard in the 90s about him performing miracles, you've basically got to get on a plane and go to India and meet him and experience him for yourself, right? Nowadays, if you hear about Paramahamsa Vishwananda, let me just pop on YouTube and have a little 5-minute clip and, okay, I made my mind up about him. He dresses this way, he acts this way, got it. That's who he is. It's wrong. That's not how you get to know people. That's not how you judge people. But we've all become highly superficial, in my opinion. But again, I sympathize because of how many charlatans are out there.
But it's also so easy to make an accusation that someone is a charlatan.
Yeah.
And I mean,
as I said, the landscape is really destroyed.
Oh, but it can be destroyed the other way by people who just like throwing out accusations. I mean, that's also the hallmark of our society. Is like, I will accuse anything and everything, despite not being fully aware of the facts, despite not having experienced it myself.
Because there's no consequence often to the accusations.
No, there isn't any a lot of the time.
And that's the thing. Like, I wish people. I've had these conversations with people before. They've come to me, complete strangers, and say, you know, how do you really know that your guru is good and everything you're doing is good? And I say to them, you know, I wish I could open my heart and show you, because words are never going to convince you. If I tell you now, it's all going to come down to how much you trust me. Now, I try to present myself as a rational thinking, logical, grounded person, because it helps people to relate to me and to experience everything that I then have to share as being authentic and real. But at the same time, I know nothing can replace personal experience. And the fact of the matter is, as we've already said, unless you do your personal investigation, you're always making assumptions from what you can see from the outside or trusting in other people's testimonies. There's no other real way to go about this. And we can throw all these terms we want, sect, cult, religion. As I've said, these can be sort of molded to fit any religious group. I can look at Christianity and say, that is the epitome of a sect or a cult. They were Jews. Yeah, that deviated. They were deviant, heretical Jews, a small little group, and they worshipped this charismatic leader, and they gave him absolute obedience. They were willing to die for him. They did die for him, right? Isn't that every negative stereotype of a cult that you could possibly imagine? And there's biblical evidence of all of this. It's not even made up stories. It's in their doctrinal text. But because with time it grows and develops over thousands of years, 2,000 in this case, and now it's so huge that you just look at this and say, no, this is bona fide organized religion, right? And I always find it so bizarre. I remember, I'll never forget, I was in a spiritual sort of health, esoteric, holistic fair here in Germany. And I was walking around dressed as a monk. And I came across a German couple that were... I have to confess, I don't really know what they were doing on their stand there. I didn't pay too much attention because the gentleman sort of spoke to me and one of the other devotees that was with me and said, why do you have to bring your culture from India to Germany? Why can't we use sort of German spiritual traditions to better ourselves and whatever else? And I said, oh, such as what? And he said, well, Christianity. And I said, are you joking? Like, Christianity, German? You mean Middle Eastern? Like, what is the difference? But there's this idea that Christianity has just rooted itself as being the West's religion. It's not Western, right? It came from the East, the Middle East, right? In the middle of the East, so to speak. And it's just like, that's what I mean by the landscape just being so distorted and so broken up. People's conceptions of all of this is so conditioned and indoctrinated that they just lose perspective. And if you tell this to a Christian, Jesus was demanding worship. He was demanding obedience. He was putting all of these things that you're accusing Hindu gurus, or in this case, Paramahamsa Vishwananda of. Either they just go into denial or they actually become shocked at how they've not looked at this and not seen the evidence and said, you know what, you're right. There's not really any difference in this except size and time, as we said earlier. And so the truth of the matter is, to avoid the Jim Joneses of this world, you've got to inspect and analyze and be a bit more sincere about your analysis of the situation, because superficial analysis is based on what people wear or what, how they present themselves superficially. It's immature. It's really immature. It's not how you sort of get to know anybody in the world. Why would you apply this to gurus suddenly as if that's the standard? And Hindus are very guilty of this. I'll now sort of turn the lens on ourselves. Vaishnavas especially. We love condemning a sort of false guru or not bona fide guru, an improper guru, based on arbitrary things like the clothes that he's wearing. And it's so nonsensical. And I campaign strongly against this, and I speak to people, very strongly about this. And I think people need to be sort of jolted into shaking their paradigm of how they look at this. if you want to know the legitimacy of somebody, get to know them. And to get to know them means talk to them, spend time with them, observe them. And exactly as you said, when you start to see that he doesn't live life for himself, but rather for others, consistently, not once in a while, but consistently over years. Again, I wish people could have the experiences that I've had. I've been living here in Sri Nilaya in Germany, the ashram, for 14 years now. And I've been following Paramahamsa Vishwananda for 17, 18 years. You can't replace that sort of experience. And so I've seen firsthand what he actually does in his free time, right? And if you just saw his fancy clothes and some nice jewelry and him getting some worship on a Guru Purnima live stream, for example, you go, wow, look at him. He's just in it for himself, isn't he? And it's this kind of immature, superficial analysis that I hope by this kind of conversation, people can sort of snap out of.
Well, there is like a kind of discipline of cultic studies. Like it does exist. Yeah. I don't know how well developed it is, but there's like these measures of what is a cult. People have tried to go deeper than that dictionary definition to make the distinction between the nefarious and the non-nefarious, the bad for the adherent and the good or neutral for the adherent. And even by those measures, Bhakti Marga doesn't count. Yeah, right. It doesn't fall foul of those tests. Guruji and Bhakti Marga doesn't fall foul of those tests, yeah? Because there are things to do with like compulsion and separation from family and your life, and all of these sort of descriptors of what makes a bad cult, shall we say. And so even with those tools in place, people still throw accusations around because they are unwilling to just do that little bit of work to find out, well, what is going on there and how does it compare to these definitions that have been developed? And yeah, so it's not wrong for people to want to be skeptical. Yeah. It's not wrong for people to want to be cautious and careful and to know that something is good for them or good for a loved one or good for people in general who are encountering it. And I don't begrudge anyone doing that. I don't begrudge anyone applying that critical lens on something. What I think is the problem is the unwillingness to develop a framework of what is actually bad and what is good, and also to be consistent in the application of that framework, and to just always use it in every situation. And the fact is, if you applied that framework to quite mainstream beliefs and religions even, you might uncover things that you don't like there.
Absolutely. And I think this is both true of the Christian world, of the Vaishnava world. We care a little too much sometimes about proving ourselves as being legitimate and sort of almost harm yourself more than you're helping yourself. So for example, when Vaishnavas say, everything must be in scripture, it must be. If it's not in scripture, it can't be true. When the scripture itself says that there are things outside of itself. Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, says that the Lord's incarnations are innumerable to the point where it cannot mention them all. It cannot list them all. But then we'll say, okay, but let's only then follow the incarnations that are mentioned. Well, is that really sensible? If you take Christianity, Christians will stress so much the prophecies in the Old Testament of Jesus's arrival, right? Because it helps them to solidify his person in tradition, in history. It's not just a sort of momentous thing of these guys thinking, oh yeah, he is great. It's foretold. But you do realize that the Jews study that very same scripture and don't come to this conclusion, right? So it's not that just because you've pointed this out, this is now universally accepted and obvious for everyone, and now this makes you irrefutably legitimate. I mean, will the Jews ever be forgiven for having rejected two messiahs, right? You have the Christians who look at them and say, here's your Messiah. And they say no. And then the Muslims go, Muhammad, this is the one. The Jews say no again. And this is the thing. Are they just having legitimate other opinions about these matters? And it's the same thing here. And I think we need to be more nuanced. We need to be more understanding. We need to have a wider lens of analysis as well, because I've met people who are very religiously tolerant, or at least they claim themselves to be, but they'll be so anti-gurus in general. And they'll say, guru means sect, guru means cult. And I'll look, okay, but you do realize that it is embedded in Hindu scripture that the guru is a key figure, almost like a necessary figure, and almost the highest necessary figure in a successful Hindu life, right? And so for you to just condemn gurus as a blanket statement, that's what I mean when I mention Hinduphobia. It's almost like you're unwilling to understand the wider Hindu lens and treat this as a genuine, bona fide religious principle, and rather just sort of say, oh, guru means cheater and some charlatan, right? That doesn't take away the fact that you mentioned there are many charlatans. And so, yes, we do have to have some sort of a framework. That's why I said there is tradition, there is scripture. The Vaishnavas will point to sampradaya. You have to have sampradaya. If you have a succession, like a parampara, a disciplic succession of gurus, this helps to add legitimacy.
But the thing is, I could start a religion.
Yeah.
Right? What's stopping me? Yeah. The thing is, I could say, look, I've read some things, I've experienced life. This is how I think it is. Right? Now, if I do that, even without any claim to sort of having a profound, beyond mundane experience of the world, I can just say, look, this is what I believe. Yeah. And then I could say that with such conviction and such force and in such a compelling way that people say, well, we're going to start following you. And then I'll say, well, this is what I want you to do. Right. And I could do all of that. Would it be wrong? Would it be wrong? Because and would it be wrong for people to follow me?
It would be wrong for them to trust you blindly. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be wrong to, if they feel like they agree with what you're saying and it brings them benefit, of course it wouldn't be wrong. Of course it wouldn't be wrong. And we need to make that clear.
Yeah.
It would not be wrong.
Exactly.
But it would be wrong for them to trust you implicitly.
Yeah, exactly. So if I do all of that, right, and I don't compel them, there's no compulsion, yeah, you must do this, that there's no sense of you need to give me everything. Yeah. Just give me everything without question, without knowing, there's no force or coercion and all of that. But I'm just a guy who just said, well, this is what I think the world is, and you can either follow me or not, right? What is disallowed by that if those people want that and are happy?
But you know what it is? I think the filter there is you're basically presenting yourself as a philosopher / theologian, right? And if you do that and you don't make any supernatural claims about yourself, then you don't require supernatural behavior from your disciples, right? They just need to sort of adhere to your teachings, and as long as it's beneficial for them, they will.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that in the case of someone like Jesus or Guruji, where there is a little extra sort of in the culture of obedience and all of this, I think to justify those requests of worship or obedience or whatever it may be, there has to be some transcendent display for us to believe that this person is of a different nature, this person is in a different state of consciousness or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what comes with that inspection.
My purpose in saying what I've just said is say it's not easy to come to conclusions about what's right and what's wrong, what's a cult, what's bad, what's good. You just said philosophy. I could say that there's a lot of good stuff in Plato, right?
Yeah.
And that Greek concept of the world is really compelling. There is a kind of panentheistic concept that's quite like Hinduism. There's a sense of the unity of everything. this flowing with nature,
stoicism.
Right. And I could just say I am now the head of the Neoplatonic Society of Springen, Germany. Yeah, that's me. That's who I am. Come and listen.
I'm honored to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, come and listen to my talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you come and listen to my talk, and I say, in order to achieve some realization akin to what Plato must have had to come to these conclusions from within himself. Yeah, we need to do what Plato did. Let's behave like Plato. Yeah, all of the things that Plato did, I'm doing, and I'm coming to realizations, and you should do them as well, right? And then I feel good, and then the people following me feel good. And, but we need a place to do our Plato stuff, right? So can you all stump up a bit of cash, yeah, so that we can rent that place, right? And then we rent that place, and I keep talking, and a few more people come, and we're like, hey, why don't we own the place? That would be more secure. And then we're free to meet more often and everything. And so then people give a bit more money, and we actually buy a place, right? You tell me now, what's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Is there anything wrong with that? No. Everyone's happy, everyone's feeling edified, everyone's feeling good. And also tell me what is different between that and you going into a church being told these things. Like, the priest is not making a claim that he's supernatural. Right. He's just saying there's some guys back in the day that knew this supernatural guy, and this is what we're following. You can feel good if you do
But
this.
You hit the nail on the head there. The priest is not making supernatural claims about himself. So in the example you just gave, I think it's all right. Nothing wrong with it at all.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is the responsibility on the individual who is heading the religion or the spiritual movement or the alleged cult to be transparent and honest about who and what he is, right? So not to make any false claims about himself, right? On that side, and on the side of the devotee or the follower, whatever you want to call it, to scrutinize every belief that they hold about that individual. Because in this case, you're just teaching a philosophy about the world, so to speak, nothing about yourself in the example you gave, right? And that's therefore relatively safe. Yeah, there's not much that can come from that.
But just to push it, because the reason I'm saying this is it's so subtle and nuanced, right? Because, what I've just said about me doing this, is it that different from a Jonestown kind of thing? Because I don't know much about him, but I think his thing was society is done. Yeah, we're going to create a utopia in South America, or wherever it was, wherever Jonestown is, and we're going to live by a set of ideals that you're going to be happier in. I don't think he was saying he was divine, right?
No, I think at that point you're right. But I think eventually didn't he start to make claims that he knew what was going to happen, he knew the future, and then he knew what would be the result of that mass suicide.
I think so. Yeah.
Right, that's a supernatural claim.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. The minute it goes to the supernatural realm, the claims, right? That you have powers that others don't.
Yeah.
That needs to be heavily scrutinized.
Yeah. So that does put us in a unique position then, doesn't it? Because
we are making such claims.
Yeah.
But that's why I like to point out the similarities to Christianity, because the same claims were made there, right? Or very similar claims. The same thing with Gaudiya Vaishnavism, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so this comes to my final point, I guess, really about this is, at the end of the day, every single religious movement that is successful, spiritual movement, all started with one person who displayed transcendence of some sort. And then some people believed it enough to tell others who then chose to believe it too.
Yeah.
And to some extent, there has to be either political reasons to prop up that belief and to keep it alive on the one side of the coin, or on the other side, experiential reasons, that you're able to reproduce the experiences that the first people who followed alleged to have. So in the case of sometimes it can be a marriage of the two as well. So in the case of the history of Christianity, you can point to the tradition of saints that have had the transcendent experiences of Christ and God the Father through the teachings of Christ. But you can also point to political influence and political agendas for propping up Christianity at different moments in history. Both of those things are true. And so both of those things have contributed to the propping up of Christianity and to the maintenance of Christianity. But at some point, you have to break it down to, why did Islam ever take root? Because people believed that the Prophet Muhammad was receiving revelation from the Archangel Gabriel. If they wouldn't believe that, there is no Islam to talk about. People had to believe in that was going on at that moment.
Well, the problem is that today, and I guess at any one time in history, but it's more profound today because of the so-called Enlightenment, from the 1700s on, the scientific Enlightenment that people talk about, that there are going to be a bunch of people who staunchly cannot believe that a transcendent being exists, right? Because they don't believe in transcendence, they don't believe in God, they only believe in materiality. And that's the problem, is that a group of people who themselves have an inherent bias, although they'll say a very well-informed bias, because there's no tangible scientifically verifiable evidence of what you're saying, then just look at anything that claims transcendence has to be wrong.
Yes.
There's no discussion or debate. It's not like, oh, let me test Paramahamsa Vishwananda, your claims, or even adherent of Paramahamsa Vishwananda, that you've experienced that. Let me test it. It's like, I must disregard it, because also one thing I've noticed is when you talk to very skeptical people who are highly atheistic and just like, this is not possible. Even when you say, oh, but there's this saint with an incorruptible body, it's all historically verified. That is their body. You can visit their body. You can see their body. They will find a way to explain that away. And it's funny. It's almost like they're in their own cult. Well, my cult of not believing in the possibility of anything transcendent.
But this is, you touch upon the most important thing, and I think that everyone needs to realize this, and that is, when you have conversations with anybody about belief in God or the assessment of the validity or not of some guru or whatever, set the paradigms of what is acceptable proof. Like where's the line where you're saying that would convince me? Because if you don't have that from the person, you're just arguing with the wall. Like there's people who you say to them, like, do you believe in God? They'll say no. And you say, okay, imagine now that you look up the sky and you say, God, are you real? And then the clouds form the words, yes, I am Jonathan. And that's your name, right? And you'll go, yeah, but that could be just, technology. Or that's an alien. That's not proof of God. And if you can't, if the person wouldn't accept that as sufficient evidence, right, what are you doing? You're just wasting your time, right? And so this is something I've been in countless religious debates. I've been there and debated against Muslims and Christians and whatever else. And it's just the biggest takeaway from those experiences has been that you need to set the framework of the conversation ahead of schedule. Like, you need to understand what would be satisfactory evidence for you to say that this is a legitimate movement and not a cult. What would be satisfactory evidence for you to say that this is truly a transcendent experience and not just some charlatan or something that can be explained by our material empirical understanding of reality, right? If those things are not mapped out in advance, or if somebody says, I don't know, most of the time you're just wasting your time. You're absolutely wasting your time. And that's the thing. I have experiences with Guruji that I've personally had, right? That I believe to be fully transcendent and have no material explanation whatsoever. I can share them. I probably will share them in several episodes or in several podcast episodes. But at the end of the day, it's just, okay, do I seem like a reliable person? Yes or no? That's going to be the criteria for people to believe me or not. And most people, as you've said, in the society we live in today, are going to look at that and say, I just reject it outright. And to those people, I will say now, I set the sort of challenge now and leave it there open-ended. Is that the scientific method? Is that the rational, mature method? To just dismiss things outright because they don't suit your preferred understanding of reality? But
it's also so arrogant. I have to say that the arrogance of people when they dismiss, right? Because, and when we think about Jesus and those more historical figures where there was science, people say there wasn't. There was some science. It wasn't in anywhere near the depth it is now, right? But there was logic, there was rationality, etc. But now we're that times 10 or however much, right? it makes what Guruji's done even more incredible and amazing. And the people who attack, it shows their arrogance, their deep arrogance, because he's in Europe. Most of the adherents have a level of education where they would at least question things. Yeah, they understand. They've been taught scientific principles in school. They've done experiments. They understand the scientific method.
Let me interrupt you. I've spoken to religious leaders, right?
Yeah.
Prominent religious leaders that have said Europe is the last place I would ever go to try to start my movement because of how rational, educated, cultured they are, and how unlikely they are to believe anything.
There you go. And some of the most atheistic societies are in Europe for that reason, because it's just only what I can measure or experience with my senses is true. Yeah, even though one can conceive of, at least in an abstract way, that there might be something called metaphysics, something that's beyond physics and beyond our comprehension, consciousness giving a signal to that, because no one can really explain consciousness or understand it. Yeah. But still, because the scientific method is to form a hypothesis and test it, and that's not testable, I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to hold at least my judgment on it, but most of the time just say, actually, it's not true, right? So then you've got a master who's come to an environment where people are educated, they don't live in a superstitious society. Everything about the society is geared towards production, rationalism, scientific endeavor, engineering,
empiricism,
everything. Yeah, everything you can imagine. But in spite of that, loads of people who then say, yes, having grown up in that environment, I am skeptical, rational, and all of those things. When I encountered Paramahamsa Vishwananda, something beyond happened, or I experienced something that I've never experienced that I can't explain to you because it is not of the senses. Yeah. And you, as the arrogant person you are, say, well, you're a fool.
I dismiss it.
Yeah, I dismiss it. Yeah. And
it's not just a singular experience, it's corroborated experiences across time, across continents, hundreds of people, thousands of people. I dismiss them all.
Isn't it amazing that, you can dismiss something like Jonestown and say, well, first of all, he wasn't making supernatural claims in the beginning, right? But then, someone charismatic could gather up some people who have problems in their lives, who are weak, who are looking for an answer. Yeah, that kind of manipulation can happen. But then you look at this mission and you say, he's come to Europe. There are doctors, dentists, lawyers, and everything, and anyone and everyone, a whole range of experience from a whole range of countries, yeah? And it's completely open. You can just walk in the door. Sri Pithanilya has an open door policy. You can literally walk in the door and say, tell me about what you are.
Two things to that, actually.
Right?
Let me touch upon that, this open door policy. Before you get initiated in Bhakti Marga, there's at least a 2-year process of qualification where you have to see if you even want to adhere to the lifestyle of a devotee. And it's done out of pure care for the people. It's like, I don't want you to get initiated and to sort of commit yourself to something that might not work out for you. So it's not even we're in a rush to just collect people and make devotees everywhere, no matter what, let's just cheat them. Guruji is very, very careful and caring for the people. It's like, look, here's the period of preparation. Just try to incorporate this into your lifestyle. If it works, great. We can have a chat later and consider initiation. If it doesn't work, you're not getting initiated, and that's fine. Just continue to follow within your lifestyle, firstly. Second of all, people have left every rank possible. Devotees, monks, brahmacharis, swamis, they've all left and come back.
All the time, yeah.
Like they have literally broken vows, left, without sort of this big demonization, and then come back sometimes a year later, sometimes 10 years later. And sort of, okay, there's a difficult chat to be had of like, let's face the reasons why it didn't work out. But then immediately welcome back in. There's no issue, right? And that for me is another hallmark of what we're really about.
Yeah. So I guess where we're talking is, can you throw that accusation? Well, first of all, are you coming from a place of inherent bias because you are not willing to even keep yourself open to the possibility of a metaphysical reality, right? Are you in that camp? Admit to yourself that you're in that camp if you are.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm good with that, yeah.
Yeah. Then if you're not, yeah, and you say, no, I am someone who believes in something metaphysical, right? But I don't believe that your master is that. Then you are free to come, right, and interrogate everything, the experiences of everyone around, their culture, their background, what's
the philosophy,
taught to
the
them,
methodology, everything.
and then also speak to that personality themselves and hear what they say and know what they do, right? You're free to do that. But don't just throw out that word cult, yeah, or it's untrue because of your own biases or your lack of interrogation of the situation, yeah? Because then you're the cult in a way. Yeah, you formed your own cult of blanket denial of something without actually investigating.
You're
it.
the brainwashed one, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think people are so quick to say, just because it happened in my head, just because that thought was in my head, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
It has to be correct. Yeah. And then when people who are of that nature speak, they themselves form their own personality cult. I tell you what, some of the ways that the behaviors around people like Richard Dawkins, it's like they're the god of their adherents.
Whatever they say.
Yeah. It's like,
scripture,
wow.
Shastra.
Yeah. Whatever his book's called. What is it?
I forgot now.
Anyway, God is not dead, or God is dead, or whatever. I can't remember the name of his book, right?
So I always get out of Christopher Hitchens, the God is not great, and then there's
God
the
is
God
not great.
delusion.
That
might be Dawkins, the God delusion.
Yeah, so Hitchens and Dawkins. And the thing is, you can, none of this is provable except within you, right? But if you're unwilling to accept that possibility, then okay, what are we going to do? But
be reasonable.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to rationality and reasonability, and I think open-mindedness, free thinking. And I think there's my closing remark on this is I think scrutinize and question, like be a free, independent thinker, but also don't do it to the extent where you're constantly scrutinizing and you're not willing to settle on a conviction as well. So I think we have to have this dual-sided nature almost, where we're like, I'm open to sort of questioning and exploring, but at the same time, I'm also opening to accepting what I have found at the conclusion of my exploration. Because you have people who sort of go too far and they believe too easily without any sort of analysis and questioning. And then you have people who just question everything and never come to any conclusions and are never happy to settle at anything because they're inherently skeptical. And Vedic culture in general is all about inquiry, but at the same time it condemns doubt. So if you look at the Gita, it talks about the jignasur, the investigator, the one who searches for knowledge, who's inquiring. The Vedanta Sutras, the Brahma Sutras, they start with the injunction to inquire into the nature of Brahman, into the nature of God, the very first verse. Do this jignasur, this investigation. Chapter 4, verse 34 of the Gita, Krishna says, when you approach a guru, approach with extensive inquiry. So there's constantly this push to investigate. At the same time,
these people who dismiss everything only investigate with their mind. Yeah. But the investigation is actually experiential within. Yeah. So it's actually not to go outside, collect data, find the empirical evidence. The only route to that transcendent reality is from within you. You have to go
because
back.
Those are the claims. The claims are about nature of self. Therefore, you have to experience it in the self. Right?
Yeah, and so there's so much bias and prejudice that these people who condemn even religion, but then also point the finger at things that are not mainstream religion and say it's a cult, and it's all based in inherent bias and or a lack of willingness to go into it and really know more about it. Like, for instance, there are people who go, all religions are BS, and they're all the same. And they're frankly not the same. They're making completely different claims. And, the hallmark of Hinduism and the thing that sets it apart from, say, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism is that it's experiential. Right. You are here to experience yourself as you truly are, and bigger than you are when essentially trapped in this body. But I don't think these people who dismiss all religions as bad and the same have even bothered to find out, oh, that's what Hinduism's about. That would be a revelation to them. They'd be saying, oh, but you just worship God like they do. Or even worse, weird-shaped gods.
They always go into that,
right?
Elephant heads and Kali, and all. It's always Kali. Kali comes up. Always. I'm scientific. They're primitive, and you're even more primitive. How about we do this, Sham? How about we do this? I think this is great material for a future episode on comparative religion, because I think as much as
there is... Do it with Myron.
Maybe. Because I think as much as there is this introspection needed, like, or at least this analysis on a experiential, personal level, I think there is also a logical coherence that has to apply there. So, for example, if a religion claims that their God is all-loving and perfectly merciful, but then will send them to hell forever, that's part of the analysis that you have to do. This is a logical incoherence in your claims, right? And I think that it's a marriage of the experience and sort of rationality and logic, coherence, right? All of that needs to marry together to form a mature, well-informed, unbiased opinion. And that's what we call, in a sense, purva paksha in Hinduism. It's this idea that if I'm going to critique something, let me first try to understand it fully from the other lens, from the other side of the coin, before I can make a full assessment on the situation. And that's what they're not doing, and that's what we're inviting them to do. Perform the purva paksha, like come and see things from the other side of the coin. And I think that's what really is the crux of the argument here.
Am I allowed to name people?
Sure.
And also that I don't like?
Yeah, do what you want.
because the whole time I was having that rant, I was thinking of Stephen Fry. He really annoys me because everyone upholds him as being, oh, he's so intelligent.
Good actor.
Right? Yeah, but he basically knows facts, right? And I have seen a YouTube video of him, because he's a staunch atheist, right? Yeah. And coming up with these arguments about why there's no God. Yeah. And they're actually kind of infantile. And they're especially infantile when you have the Hinduistic worldview and some experience of a transcendent reality, even if minor, within yourself and also in your experience of Guruji. So, for instance, one of the things that Hinduism makes you realize is how insignificant this material life actually is. We already know it is because we're going to die, but when you see it in the grand scheme of an eternal soul, and the
distinction between Prakriti and Purusha also.
And also that we reincarnate, etc. But then you also touch upon that reality. Yeah, you do some sadhana and you actually touch upon that reality. Certain things that you say are unfair or don't make sense to you or a benevolent God wouldn't do, you're like, well, no, in that grand sweep and broad perspective, they can make sense. Yeah, they do make sense. They are so for instance, children dying of terminal illnesses. Yeah, there can't be a God. Why would a God do that? Yeah. But in that grand sweep, the Hindu or Vaishnava or Sanatan Dharma worldview, that can make sense.
Yes, the question becomes nonsensical. Actually.
Yeah. And you haven't even begun to look at religions outside of
But
the one that you grew up
That's
in.
what I was about to say. I understand where they're coming from, and they're refuting the mainstream religions of their culture, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because in a one life scenario, the kids dying at birth or whatever doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can understand why the arguments would be made in that direction. You can understand the issue. So I think it's just that it's a narrow lens, or perhaps a targeted audience. Perhaps he's someone like Stephen Fry or whoever else is just targeting the religions that he's exposed to, right? I do think with globalism and the 2023, you do have to have a broader perspective, and Hinduism is global enough for people to make a serious investigation into it.
Yeah, and it just goes back to what we said before. Like you just get on your soapbox about anything, and the first thing that comes into your head is, and we mistake being articulate and clever with
being truthful or accurate,
and also just being well informed. Yeah, are you genuinely well informed to the extent that actually, do you know what? I've investigated all of the religions. I've seen that there are broad, deep differences. Yeah, they're their own thing. Some of them are more similar than others, but there is actually broad spectrum from the salvation to the experiential. Yeah, from the blind faith to the actual revelatory, internally revelatory. Yeah. And everything in between, and you can't just throw this stuff out in the same way that you can't throw it out about a cult or something that seems like a cult to you just because it's heterodox. It's not mainstream. There aren't a big number of adherents, and the message is a bit offbeat from what you know and understand. Yeah. You can't just say, "Oh, well, that's a cult." Yeah, but I understand there are some things that you should probably be wary of and say, oh yeah, that looks a bit dangerous. But all of it is predicated on being well informed about things broadly and the thing you're looking at.
Yes.
That's it, isn't it?
It is, and I agree.
Yeah. So there we go. I just solved everything.
That's why I brought you on, Sean, to solve everything. Mission accomplished.
Let's get Stephen Fry to come here and learn about Vaishnavism.
Yeah, if he's up for it.
If anyone can make that happen, our challenge is that we'll get Stephen Fry to a point where he will understand and accept, in the grand scheme of things, why some children get cancer.
Yes, that's a very specific outcome that we can work towards.
I think we should do it.
I'm up for it.
Okay.
I'm up for it. Challenge has been launched. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Great chat. Look forward to future episodes.
Okay.
Let's do this again.
Thank you.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.